Oh, hello there. I almost didn't see you. I'm just getting caught up on everything Marvel right now. I'm a bit of a Marvel nerd, if you will, a merd. Speaking of which, I just finished playing Spider-Man 2 New Game Plus, and I cannot wait to move on to the next Marvel game. Wait a second. What is the next Marvel game right now? My short attention span and love for binge culture is eating at me. I have to figure this out. 1 second, please. Let's see. What is... Always go to the internet for all your questions. Is the next Marvel game. Here we go. What is this? It's not coming out until 2025. What the fuck? Sorry about that. If that feels familiar or like someone you know, I'm sorry. You should probably have an intervention for them, and kill them, maybe even. Not really. I'm Jay, and this is Always Late, the YouTube channel. So recently, I got to thinking about superhero games and how we don't really see as many as we used to. There for a while, it felt like there was a large variety of games based on superhero IPs, or even completely original third-party games that really made you feel like a superhero. Many of the fantastic games of the past are inaccessible due to licensing and copyright, while the modern editions, albeit good most of the time, are few and far between. But I mean, you better hope it releases in a playable state. Everyone knows how that goes these days, and even then, you better hope that it's fun and actually a good game. To just be playable is, bare minimum at this point. Thankfully, Marvel Games has, returned in a cool fashion. They've got some really good plans for the future. Plenty of you nerds will have some content to chomp down on in the coming years, especially 2025 going forward. But when did these Marvel games start coming out? So yeah, I did some light research, which means I went to Wikipedia, and the first Marvel video game is listed as Spider-Man from 1982, which released on Atari 2600. It's an action side-scroller, which is what a lot of these games were. Some variation of beat-em-up or visual novel due to the technical limitations of the time. It's not really until 2002, with Spider-Man the movie tie-in game, do I start to feel that nostalgia and, really relate with the games. There are definitely some entries in this era that helped pave the way so that superhero games could really find their footing. You got Hulk 2003, based on the Ang Lee movie, and X2 Wolverine's Revenge, released in the same year. However, where I believe the golden era begins is shortly after these, in the year 2004, with what many regard to be one of the best superhero games ever. Spider-Man 2, a movie tie-in game. I personally played it on PlayStation 2 back in the day, but what you see here is a GameCube version. In Spider-Man 2, you can explore NYC or New York City like never before, replaying many of the iconic events of the movie. It even has some returning voice actors like Tobey Maguire.
Thanks, Harry. Hey, MJ.
Nostalgia is a big factor when it comes to this game. When I was a kid, I always played pretend I was the superhero of whichever movie I just watched, and this let me do that flawlessly. But now that I'm older, the cracks kind of start to show. I'll list being a tie-in movie game as a flaw in future entries I mention, and it's because it always limits the story and makes the characters feel watered down. Spider-Man 2's story shines when it focuses on moments that Treyarch got to have full reign on. Moments that stand out to me are the Black Cat chase scene.
Who?
You got nice moves for a dork in tights.
And fighting Rhino. This game has select moments that make you feel like Peter's dual life and that struggle that he had. So you'll be like swinging around and I'm late to Dr. Connor's class. On the gameplay side, the world is fun to explore, and there are plenty of videos talking about the immense work put into web swinging, which feels phenomenal to this day. Between missions, you can deliver pizza, save citizens, and ignore those fucking balloons. Visually, everyone talks about the graphics downgrade, but I honestly never thought it looked horrible, and that could be nostalgia talking, but also I think it's just like, I don't know, it kind of has its own low poly style. Originally, I had only intended to look at Spider-Man 2 when it came to Spider-Man video games. If I took the time to talk about every Spider-Man game that I love in this video, it wouldn't be like just a general Marvel overview. It would just be a Spider-Man video. However, I'll at least talk about 2 more in this one. The next one being Ultimate Spider-Man. Only a year after Spider-Man 2, so like 2005, my favorite Spider-Man game released. Many of the aspects that Spider-Man 2 got right, Ultimate Spidey did as well, but with the added bonus of being directly tied to the comics. This was the first game I got when I was lucky enough to get a GameCube from my grandparents. Out of all the superhero games, we rarely get games in the comics. I have personally met Mark Bagley as well, and I'm a huge fanboy of that comic title. Right away, you can tell that it looks like a comic book due to that cell shading, which, Borderlands does as well. And it helps it age really well. But what you might not know is that Bendis, the writer of Ultimate Spider-Man, helped with the story for this game. Even more amazing is that it's very similar to what unfolds in the Venom story arc. I'm pretty sure they used that as a template going forward. So you get to play out iconic moments that you see or read. Not just as Peter, but also as fucking Venom. How cool is that shit? Of course, the tedious time trials and collectathon stuff gets old, but man, that combat felt so cool as a kid. And it's not horrible now by any means, but it's simplistic by today's standards. Where it really shines are the boss fights. I fucking love playing the Wolverine boss fight as Venom. When I was a kid and first got a GameCube, I didn't have a memory card, so I played from the beginning, which is the best opening sequence in a superhero game, by the way, at least in my humble opinion.
Our fathers died to create me, and now you will too.
Lie on the ground with your hands over your head. Both of you on the ground now. The hell is that?
From start to the Wolverine fight, and then I would lose all progress because I didn't have a memory card. So traversal feels fun with Peter doing flips and Eddie leaping around, and you get to do it on more than one island of NYC. Overall, I think this game achieves letting you live out the fantasy of being a Spider-Man straight from the pages best, and I wish we got more games directly based off of the comics before we transition to the sort of this original stories and interpretations of beloved characters. So now I'm gonna have a brief little honorable mention for y'all. In the same year as Ultimate Spider-Man, THQ released The Punisher, which gets called a Max Payne clone, but honestly it's more than that, and it's really cool. It's heavily inspired by Punisher Max and the movie, and it has like sort of this unique feeling and story behind it, so I would love to talk about it more in another video. So the next game that I really want to show some love to is another 2005 banger called The Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction. Maybe you've heard of it. This game feels sort of like a general Hulk story, taking inspiration from many stories, but if it's based on a specific comic arc, please let me know. I think it really pulls from a lot around that time period. But this game also features an explorable world, and I always liked that it isn't the only location though, because you start with Hulk in isolation in the desert, which is a very familiar setting for Banner. So if you read the comics, you'll kind of recognize certain moments. And after a mission, you may travel somewhere else. Like there's this one mission where you get to go inside Hulk's mind. How fucking cool is that? So similar to the Spidey games, Spider-Man 2, Ultimate Spider-Man, and a few others, this one nails traversal. Hulk can jump and run exactly how you see in the comics, and even how you see in the Ang Lee movie. But it lets you take that movement and have fun in a sandbox environment, allowing you to play around freely as this destructive monster. You can destroy shit, Want to tear a car apart and use it as gloves? Fucking do it. Use a car as a shield? Do it. Destroy whatever you want and wait for the military to show up, because there are responses to your actions even outside the story. I mean, as soon as you land in the city, like, cops everywhere. So it's responsive, and I like that. The only downfall is I remember the bosses being lackluster, but I mean, it did have Devil Hulk, which I totally didn't realize, and since then, Hulk and Devils have kind of become, synonymous and very popular, especially if you read the Immortal Hulk series. If not, check it out. So wrapping up the year 2005, which had a lot of hits and seems to be the year that really evolved this genre of game. I'm kind of just noticing that. But it's Marvel Nemesis Rise of the Imperfects.
You gotta be kidding. This is going to be too easy.
Which is a fighting game, and normally I would be against fighting games when it comes to like the best of the best superhero games, because on paper it's vastly restricting what one can do. If I'm Spider-Man, I want to freely swing around and not be stuck moving left or right, similar to how being a movie tie-in game limits the story. However, Marvel Nemesis is an arena fighter, so your movement isn't totally restricted, and rather than going from pointless fight to fight, you actually had small linear areas to progress through with slight obstacles before reaching a boss fight. Which is how this game tells its story. Fighting a boss, then get cutscene. Pretty standard. It's an original story from EA, but they backed it really well, even putting out a mini-series. Where it took most liberty was creating new characters, which were called the Imperfects. Of course, none of it was canon, but it was still cool. So who is included in the story? Alright, so I gotta say, for the time, this roster felt crazy. When I first played it, even though there aren't a lot of characters, they all felt really cool. You got Ultimate Wolverine, The Thing, which, by the way, this version of Thing is like my favorite. Even though he's just got like jeans on, he felt like such a badass to me. There's also Elektra, Daredevil, Storm, Venom, Spidey, Human Torch, Iron Man, and Magneto. And then all of the Imperfects were playable as well. But this is a Marvel game, so I'm just going to kind of, gloss past them. I really love how after a fight, this game made you feel accomplished with its quips.
Is that all you got?
You gone and done it now. You're grounded.
I tried to be nice.
You know what we call that? We call that a web-slinging ass-kicking.
Lastly, the aesthetic was grungy and shows a darker side to the Marvel Universe, like the Punisher game, but this one's tamed down some, and this reflected the comics medium in the coming years. We had darker storylines that started to unfold. Next, to no surprise, in 2006 Marvel Ultimate Alliance came out, which is one of the more popular Marvel games that are still talked about, and for good reason. You may have noticed that I didn't mention X-Men Legends when I was passing through the year 2005, and this is why. That series and this game are both published by Activision, but I feel this is their best version of that type of game. Pick 4 of your favorite heroes wearing your favorite costumes and take on the galaxy. Not every Marvel game needs to have a larger set of characters. I feel like, especially with that superhero fatigue nowadays, we're getting tired of crossovers, and like solo stories would be nice. But a team game should definitely have a variety. Not to mention the Avengers isn't exactly a private club, and you avoid disappointment, kinda, by letting the player choose their team. You can't make everyone happy, but at least some will be. And each character has their own cool and unique abilities, so maybe Ghost Rider isn't your favorite, but you like his moves, so it's kind of like getting some exposure there. I mean, I gotta give them props for including some lesser-known characters. Moon Knight may be a household name now because of the Disney Plus show, but at that time, he was definitely kind of underground. C-list, maybe even. In Ultimate Alliance, you get to travel from iconic location to location, and you really feel the larger scope of the Marvel Universe. Doctor Doom is the big bad villain, but you face many threats along the way, making the stakes feel greater than any usual one-off threat. Like, you get to see Galactus, who is super underutilized, it feels like. Especially at that time, with his appearance in the Fantastic Four movie. The fucking fart cloud. But yeah, anyway, you get to save the galaxy and not just New York in this game, and that's cool. So I got another honorable mention here. In 2008, of course, we got the Iron Man game. and along with it, kicking off the MCU. So I felt like it was notable. But the game itself, I feel, is kind of lackluster. You get to fly, and it's really awesome. But other than that, I don't have much to say. I feel like the story was kind of lackluster, and the level design was, mid. So I thought I would at least mention it. So a little later down the road, in 2009, X-Men Origins Wolverine came out, and people absolutely fucking hated it. What's that? Oh, we're not talking about the movie? Oh, yeah, video games. So later, X-Men Origins Wolverine, the game came out, and people loved it. How do you make a game about a guy that has a healing factor and can't die? You do it like this. This game manages to pull off making you feel like a bullet sponge badass without making the game too easy. You get to fucking dive out of a helicopter. Honestly, what better hero to pick for a hack and slash game? It also pulls from Ultimate Alliance some with like Wolverine special attacks, and they all feel really cool. Of course, being a movie tie-in game proves to have its cons, whereas in Spider-Man 2, nostalgia and love are, kind of blinding and help gloss past some of that. This game definitely had no love to rely on from the movie. It was all sort of, oh, well, Hugh Jackman, I guess, but, even then, that was not doing much to save this. So the story for this game isn't fantastic, and you may not particularly connect with the characters, as is the case with many tie-in games, but hey, I get to put on the tiger stripe suit and feel like Wolverine. Similar to the Punisher game, I think this entry proves a game can have some gore and edge. What this game does best, you get to feel like a badass.
You used to be more chatty than this. I guess you're not the merc with a mouth anymore.
Alright, so now I've got 2 back-to-back honorable mentions. Just skipping ahead all the way to 2011, we got Captain America Super Soldier. It's an Arkham clone, and it pulls it off decently well. It's set in World War II, and I really love that choice. So you get to be flung straight into a war zone and throw around your silly shield. It's definitely not a perfect game, but it was a fun one to rent at Movie Gallery or Family Video back in the day, if you remember that. And the next honorable mention I have is in the same year, and I just definitely felt it was worth mentioning. We got X-Men Destiny, which lets you assume the role of a brand new mutant of your choice and join an ongoing conflict on the side of your choice, either Brotherhood or X-Men. So props for giving me a reason to play that again and try new powers. It was very replayable. It was very immersive as well, stepping into this world of mutants. I for sure believe this one is overlooked simply because X-Men today kind of fell into the background a little bit. They're very hard to get into as a new fan, even if you do watch all those movies, the Fox movies. Most of the X-Men fans that read comics that I know were fans of the cartoon and stay with it for that reason, but I do think they're getting a resurgence with X-Men 97, and hopefully their introduction to the MCU will breed a whole new set of X-Men fans, and, maybe because of that, we'll get some pretty dope games. So time goes by, the clock ticks, and we get to 2013, where I believe the last of the best of classic Marvel games was released. And it was none other than Lego Marvel Superheroes. Alright, I'm baiting you with that. Not really. Marvel superhero games. Lego Marvel Superheroes is a fun game, of course. I played it a lot as a kid, but I actually mean Deadpool. So thinking back, I remember the Deadpool game very fondly, and it seemed like most people I talked to agreed. However, after some YouTube scouring, I've found some negative takes, which is interesting and kind of makes sense. What this game does right is also what I think it gets wrong. Deadpool is a game first, and a superhero tells second. Deadpool opts to be set in something akin to the mainline Marvel universe, except Deadpool is writing the story, which is the perfect setup for a Deadpool game. It leaves way to all kinds of crazy shenanigans that can happen. And you best believe the merc with a mouth makes all manner of jokes, and the game is chock full of fun moments. If your only knowledge of Deadpool was from the movies and Hot Topic merchandise, then this would be the perfect game. Especially because the gameplay is very serviceable, being a standard hack slash shoot 'em up. However, Deadpool isn't necessarily like the wacky interpretation we see here. Deadpool actually has some depth to his character in the comics, and to frame him as only capable of jokes limits the character in an already very limited game. What else is limited? Well, the setting is Genosha, and it kind of feels bland. The enemies are clones, and they're all kind of indistinct, even though they're clones of Mr. Sinister, and that feels bland. And you don't really get to team up with a featured cast of characters, save for Cable, like, once, I think. And that's stupid. If you're going to have those other characters there, like, let me play alongside them. It's still a great game and proves you can take what was a lesser-known character and introduce many people to them, because this was kind of that pre-Ryan Reynolds Deadpool era, where Deadpool was definitely popular, but wasn't like a household name. At the end of the day, this isn't meant to be some genre-defining, game-changing new thing. It's just a fun game, no different than a standard Marvel movie. So what I really like about it is that it puts the fun first. If you can sort of get past that this isn't going to tell some in-depth story, you're going to have a good time. Especially maybe at least the first time. You know, I don't know if this game is actually the most replayable, but you'll enjoy it. Hell yeah. All right, so that brings us to sort of the modern era, I'm calling it. And in that modern era, it seems like for 5 years, things really slowed down. We weren't getting very many fleshed out Marvel games, but you best believe they released some more Lego games, mobile games, an MMO, and also the Telltale Guardians game. It seems like such a missed opportunity that when so many loved Marvel, they were dropping the ball on the video game medium. But finally, something came along and broke the ice. Melted the ice, I guess? I don't know what I fucking meant there. I'm sure many of you were waiting for it, and in 2018, Marvel Powers United VR released. No, I mean Insomniac released Spider-Man PS4. Of course I was going to bring this up, why wouldn't I? For the first time in a long time, I was hyped for a game again. This was the last midnight release I ever attended at a GameStop, or just anywhere. This game is now widely regarded to be one of the best modern takes on superhero games, period. Adopting many of the things that work from, the Arkham games and former Spidey games, I don't really think I need to go over why this game works in depth. So I'll just list off what everyone has probably heard. Expansive and engaging setting / characters, an immersive, well-crafted story, fun and challenging combat, and love. This game was made by people who love Spider-Man and love making games. They also knew they had a reputation to uphold. They had all these games that were the perfect building blocks. Best of all, it's an all-original game. No ties to any movies, but very inspired by the comics. It has the best superhero story in a game to this date, in my opinion. All right, so I'm briefly going to mention this Switch exclusive, which came out in 2019, and it's Ultimate Alliance 3. It's a different game than the first one, but, kind of the same gameplay-wise. It feels a little bit different, but what's really unique about this entry is it caused some controversy. Firstly, because it was a Switch exclusive, but also the story being based on the Infinity Stone saga kind of caused some head rolls, I guess, because people were already getting tired of that because of the movies, and I think you had other entries like fucking Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, so it was sort of overdone, and the game before that, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2, had a lackluster story as well, with Civil War. So I think people were they wanted something big out of Ultimate Alliance. Especially in the first game, you have Galactus, like I mentioned. So overall, it just kind of felt lackluster. Which takes us to 2020, and no video games came out from Marvel. Nope. Definitely not the Marvel's Avengers flop. Okay, so yeah, they did release that game, and like I said, it flopped. And it tried to do live service, which was poorly executed. Go watch a video on it some other time. If not, maybe I'll make one. All I have to say is that it would have been so easy to ride the high of 2018 Spidey, and they fucked up big time. But if I'm being honest, the story wasn't bad, and certain aspects of the combat / gameplay was pretty fun. So for the story, you have the Avengers that are disbanded because of this big incident that happens, and it's up to Kamala Khan to sort of rebuild it. Now, on paper, that sounds awesome. And it's because it is. If you go read Avengers Twilight, which is a miniseries going on right now, by the time I put out this video, it'll probably be finished even. It's like 6 issues. It's very similar. Except this time Captain America is the one who has to rebuild it, and he's this old guy in this techno future, and this big incident happens. So go check it out. I feel like the writer, I think it's Chip Zdarsky, definitely took inspiration from this game. But as far as going back to the game itself, it missed the mark with its choice to be live service. I mean, it shelled out on cosmetics and boring level design, and of course everyone hated the character designs. They looked like MCU stunt doubles, which is a letdown when you look at the voice cast. Such missed potential there. When the teaser for this game dropped, everyone assumed something more akin to Ultimate Alliance, but maybe with a more in-depth gameplay and combat system, something akin to Arkham or 2018 Spider-Man. If anything can be said, I think at least Marvel learned a lesson from this, because they released all the cosmetics and expansions for free before cutting off service to the game. And when I returned, I actually played for 2 hours because of that, just getting back into it. If you got it, I'd say it's worth trying again. So briefly mentioning, later that year in 2020, actually, we got Miles Morales, and I think that kind of helps make up for the Avengers disappointment. It built upon what the first game did really well. Miles has since exploded into popularity because of, Into the Spider-Verse movies, and if you haven't checked out any of his comic series, they're all really good. I'd start with the Bendis run. Most people usually criticize this game for how short it is, and I think that's kind of fair, especially for the price point at the time. But other than that, it's a really solid game. So something I never knew I actually needed was 2021's Guardians of the Galaxy, which was fantastic. Some honestly unique gameplay where you command the Guardians to Star-Lord. This game by far has the best settings and a pretty good story. Do I feel like I'm in the comic books? No. But I also don't feel like I'm in the movies either. It's sort of falling in that 2018 Insomniac range where it's like this original take on things. It doesn't quite suffer from the stunt double effect like Avengers did either. They all have their sort of own look that's definitely inspired by the comics while also a little bit like the movies. Star-Lord himself looks more like his comics counterpart than he does Chris Pratt. So, there's that. Overall, the Guardians game has the right vibe and tone going. A Spider-Man game should make you feel hopeful and heroic even when you're at your lowest. But Guardians makes you feel like you're part of a ragtag crew, like you found where you belong in the most unlikely place in the universe, and it's with friends and family. Plus, the game had a kick-ass soundtrack. If this one slipped past you, please go play it. It's well worth it. So my last sort of honorable mention of the modern age is in 2022, we had the Odd Midnight Suns release. So if you like XCOM type gameplay, I don't personally, but if you do, you'll probably love this game. I know others who do love this type of gameplay, and they sunk a lot of hours into it. But I don't think this game really accomplishes the superhero feeling. I do like, however, that they had a role-playing aspect to it, and they cited that Persona was an inspiration, so props for them for doing something different, and I think that has a lot of potential there, but maybe just in a different game. Alright, so the last game of the modern age that we've gotten so far is in 2023, Spider-Man 2 came out, and it seems to have less reception than the first game did, or the Miles Morales game did, but it isn't a bad game by any means. I love swinging around in the symbiote suit, and those abilities, the symbiote abilities, feel way more engaging than the gadgets in the first game. Additionally, the traversal system got even better, which I didn't think was possible. I love to swing around and save civilians and stop crime and use my web wings. It's all like therapy for me. But the story is kind of lackluster compared to the first one, and the threats are raised, but the consequences aren't there. Venom is a fan favorite character, and that sequence is amazing. But I know many would agree with me that Ultimate Spider Man kind of did it better the first time around. Craven as like the big bad isn't a bad choice, but he isn't as hype as the Sinister Six, which he fucking kills, and it's off screen. All right, so just a brief little section here. If you're unaware, Marvel has announced many upcoming games that I believe are steps in the right direction, but only time will tell because obviously we haven't played them, and we honestly have very brief information. I don't think we have any trailers, but if the titles alone can promise anything, and the games that we've seen leading up to this, uh, Marvel Games has really returned, and they have some awesome plans. So I'll just kind of rapid fire list them off here. We got Marvel 1943 Rise of Hydra, a Captain America and Black Panther game. Marvel's Wolverine, made by Insomniac, which is surely going to be successful. We already had some leaked gameplay and it looks promising. There's an Iron Man game coming out, which is probably a modern version of the 2008 game with an original story, hopefully less MCU-esque and more comic book inspired. And we've also got Blade by Arcane Leon. Fuck yes, thank God this game didn't get canned by Xbox/Microsoft because of everything that they closed down. And lastly, we got Marvel Rivals, which is an Overwatch clone. Initially, I thought it was really weird, but I've been seeing a lot of gameplay for it lately, and it seems to already have a very dedicated fan base, and I'm kind of looking forward to it. So the future of Marvel games looks bright, but I gotta say, when I was playing these games back in the day, I feel like I had some cool ideas too. Maybe you played them, back then, and you brainstormed with your friends. What if they made a Daredevil game like this, and you could swing from your billy club like Spider-Man, and maybe he had like a detective mode because he's blind like Batman, stuff like that. That's what this last section of the video is going to be. I thought it would be fun to just take some of the cool ideas from the games we've looked at today and come up with some new stuff. What if they made a video game like this sort of thing? Especially because gaming has come such a long way and it's largely respected as its own medium now. And there are many genres that Marvel games, or even superhero games in general, haven't tried yet. So, let's come up with some of our own. So, for my first idea, I thought it would be cool to make a roguelike dungeon crawler with Doctor Strange as the main character. Something akin to Hades, where we can travel dimensions and different planes, maybe learn spells or get magic artifacts, take down bosses never before seen in a mainstream media. Just read Fall Sunrise. It's a mini series about Doctor Strange, and tell me the settings for this game wouldn't be amazingly pretty, and just overall the art style could be so unique. So for the next game, I think a lot of people have said something similar to this. I think a close hand-to-hand combat game like Sifu would be really fun. Maybe get those developers in on it. If you play that game, you'll know that there are mods of Daredevil in it. So clearly people believe a Daredevil game like that would be amazing. And I agree. However, I actually think an Iron Fist game would work way better for this. He has a far more engaging combat style, both in possible gameplay, but also visually. We would be able to see iconic locations like Kunlun. Overall, I think the potential is just immense here. And you could even make it a Heroes for Hire game and have Luke Cage, who has a completely different combat style. How fucking cool would that be? Alright, so bear with me on the next one. Clearly people love Sony exclusives, and God of War is a fantastic example. That's part of the reason why I think we got Insomniac Spider-Man. That's a Sony exclusive as well, or at least it was until they put it on PC. So using God of War as the template here, I'm going to pitch to you Planet Hulk. I've heard many people say that because of the axe throwing mechanic in God of War, it would be perfect as like a Thor game. And while I do agree with that, I think a more focused, plot-driven Hulk story would be amazing. And why not adapt one of his most popular comics to tell that story? The gladiator combat would mesh perfectly with God of War's gameplay. Especially like those arena fights that came out after the game. And the boss fights for God of War would translate so well into Planet Hulk. Just imagine going toe to toe with Silver Surfer or Thor, like in the recent Banner of War arc in the comics. It would be absolutely insane. And if you're worried about like power level, you could just use the electronic limiter that like enslaved Hulk as an excuse for why he might get beat up and why you might fucking die and not just eliminate these godlike bosses. Next, I'm gonna tailgate off of the whole Sony thing that I've been using, and it seems like people love Last of Us, understandably so. Got a very gritty sort of nature to it, and I think that game would lend perfectly to someone just as brutal. A Punisher game by Naughty Dog would be fucking cool. You could scavenge and craft for survival in a gang-ridden section of New York, or like a war zone. That could be really awesome. Maybe both. You could start as Frank Castle in Vietnam, and then fast forward, play through the section where he loses his family, and then fast forward and like now you're like scavenging this little section of New York, gathering parts to upgrade your weaponry and everything, taking out gang by gang. It'd be so cool. And Naughty Dog does cinematic moments really well, so you could use those to flesh out Frank Castle and his story. His loss, his motivation, his drive for revenge. It would be a very awesome game. I think what is necessary for all superhero games is for it to be an RPG in some capacity. And they almost always miss the mark on the balance of secret identity or dual life and all the responsibilities that are entailed in that. Of course, Insomniac Spider-Man does a really good job at that. But I would love a game that slows down and focuses on that like more closely. A game like Persona 5 would be very immersive and engaging and could be applied to many Marvel heroes, not just Spider-Man with his dual life. So I'm going to say an X-Men turn-based game where you attend Xavier's Academy, study, form relationships, and make choices, and, save lives would be really good. You could possibly make your own mutant character like X-Men Destiny, or, just play as one of your favorites, one of the younger ones. Maybe Kitty Pryde, or, Bobby was pretty young, I think, in the movies at least. You get what I'm saying. All right, so I had more ideas, but for the sake of time, I'm going to rapid fire off some of these like more half-baked ones. And some of them are kind of out there, so, bear with me. But here we go. I think a Mad Max Ghost Rider game would be cool. Uncharted Hawkeye, Venom Prototype, Deadpool Souls-like parody, Arkham/Gotham Knights, but actually good, using the Marvel Knights characters. I think a Metal Gear Solid, Black Widow / Winter Soldier, like spy espionage game would be really cool. And lastly, a platformer, Little Nightmares Ant-Man game, maybe even with sections where you are the big guy, would be really cool. Giant Man. Well, guys, we've reached the end of the video, and I know I didn't go super into depth about some of the games, and I wish I had time to do like a full retrospect on all of them, but I wanted this video to be more of like a general look at everything. If you want more focused retrospect content about anything that I mentioned, I'd love to make a video about it sometime, and I've definitely got some ideas, so stick around the channel. If not, I hope this reminded you of a game you forgot or gave you a new perspective on something. Maybe at least got to thinking about all the potential there is for Marvel games in the future. I think we get so caught up in products that we're handed today, and we forget to think what could be, like we imagined when we were kids. So thanks for listening to my ramble. This is the first video I'm putting out on this channel, and I hope to get better. So I'll see you guys later. Thanks.